Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivan Moses Okuni, and this is just a continuation of the series of piece of training I plan to deliver this year. The videos shall be on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm using Safety Legion as my YouTube page. So if anyone enjoys watching on YouTube, please subscribe and visit Safety Legion. So I'd started with introduction in occupational health and safety last week. This is also a trial video, and I wanted to use this to ensure that I create an understanding and support every professional, health and safety professional out there understand the fundamentals of safety, of which most of them are derived from human factors or ergonomics. So today we're going to dive into an introduction to ergonomics. What is ergonomics? Ergonomics is defined as the scientific discipline that is concerned with understanding of the interactions between human beings and elements of a system, and the profession that applies theory, principles, methods, and data to design in order to optimize human well-being and overall system performance. In short, it refers to fitting the job to the worker. But if you look at the latter definition of fitting the job to the worker, most organizations actually use the human resource departments to fit a worker to a job, because they draft job descriptions that specify the skills, experience, education, sometimes someone's physique, and this is done to align someone to the requirements of the job. But as a health and safety professional, you're looking at fitting the job to a worker. So this definition of ergonomics was derived from Greek words. Ergo means work, and then nomos means laws, and this was derived from the International Ergonomics Association. So what are the benefits of ergonomics? Ergonomics helps to prevent injuries, improve quality of work and life, reduce fatigue and discomfort, increase productivity and efficiency, improve morale and job satisfaction of employees, and then reduce turnover. If you look at all these factors, they really reflect what organizations could provide, what employees are interested in, because everyone wants to come to work and go back the way they came. And that's what most organizations also strive towards, ensuring that every employee returns home the way they came to work. Then we continue. What are work-related musculoskeletal disorders, WMSDs? So these are sometimes known as cumulative trauma disorders, or repetitive strain injuries, or overuse injuries. They are soft tissue injuries which occur gradually. WMSDs are occupational disorders of the soft tissues. Now comes occupational disorders, meaning the result as to how your tasks were designed and how you perform those specific tasks. So this is now where the occupational health and safety management plan can be derived from, where that process you call job hazard analysis is supposed to be applied. So if you understand this, it means when it comes to applying the OSH principles, it's going to be easy. So the soft tissues are muscles, tendons, ligaments, joints, blood vessels, nerves, spinal discs, as you can see from an illustration. So yeah, that's what the musculoskeletal disorders are. So ways MSDs injure the body. Muscles can be strained or torn. For example, overstretching. Tendons can be strained, torn, or inflamed. Of course, tendons attach muscles to bone, so depending on the kind of work that you're doing, they can also be affected. The tendon sheath can be inflamed. Tendon sheath are the protective wrapping for the tendons, which contain fluid so that the tendon can slide back and forth within the sheath. Nerves can be pinched. Ligaments can be sprained or fibers torn from the bone. Ligaments attach actually bone to bone. So here you remember the science you did in primary school, maybe P4, or the biology you did from senior 1 to senior 4, understanding the body structure. And then the discs can slip or bulge. Discs are the shock absorber between the vertebrae of the spine. So some people actually, because of the kind of work they do, maybe you're overbending. So overbending, so the discs are sliding, you're keeping them strained for some time, and that's what causes low back pain. So all these aspects are the ones we include in the occupational health and safety management plan to ensure that all the impacts are reduced. What are some of the symptoms of WMSDs? Discomfort, pain, numbness, tingling, inflammation, burning, swelling, change in color, and then tightness or loss of flexibility. What causes WMSDs? So heavy, frequent, or awkward lifting. For example, if you look at people who load bricks onto load and offload bricks onto tipping trucks or dump trucks, you realize that the motions are repetitive. You find someone is twisting specific parts of the body and not moving the entire body to ensure that they are not strained. There's pushing, pulling, or carrying loads, working in awkward postures, hand intensive work, vibrations. Those ones who work in road construction companies that use hand soil compacting equipment face this kind of vibrations. Contact, stress. I'll give an example. For example, for those ones who work in the office, sometimes you realize the armrest on your chair is actually below the table. So when you're typing, your arm where the wrist is could be actually in contact with the sharp edges of the table. So if you type and you do that work like and you remain in that position for maybe 1 hour, you start feeling that your wrists are paining. That's why people get up and they start try to massage the wrists. Risk factors. Risks of injury depends upon the duration of exposure. Just like I'd said, sometimes you take long seated or you take long bending, and then frequency of the exposure. It's repetitive. You're doing the same task maybe for 8 hours a day. If it is loading and offloading bricks, the same thing. And then intensity of the exposure. That looks at how much. See, sometimes if you look at you're carrying very heavy load, so you find, or you're lifting a very heavy load, so the weight can have a significant impact on your back when you're bending. And then combination of risk factors, where all those 3 risk factors affect your work. Then we look at duration. the length of exposure to a risk factor. Usually need hours of exposure before risk factors become a concern. Can be all at one time or cumulative over the day. And then frequency is often a concern in assembly tasks, sorting tasks, loading or offloading materials, just like I already explained before. Inventory of products, product stocking, keying or typing or frequent mousing. That's why we say there's that branch of ergonomics that looks at the offices. It's called office ergonomics. Looks at the design of office workspaces. Intensity. This refers to weight in pounds. Like I already told you, some loads can be really heavy, and you may not manage to carry as one person. And then grip or pinch force if you lifted or manipulated items. For example, there are people who don't have tap water at home, so you have to go to the nearest well or borehole. Then if you have noticed, sometimes when you're carrying a jerrycan, you may walk a few steps, can be 20, then you put it down. If you continue, the jerrycan will keep on sliding, loosening your grip on it, and can even fall down. So normally people place the jerrycan of water down because they feel that it was slipping off their fingers, meaning it had loosened the grip force. And then vibration, and then force on keys when typing. So that's why some people are very comfortable with on screen touch screens. Yeah, sorry. So you're no longer using these manual, hard keyboard or the keypads. Risk factors for WMSDs. So heavy, frequent, or awkward lifting. That is just what you have to put in your mind. Heavy lifting. There are only recommendations for maximum weights a person can lift. Yeah, you can't lift all loads. So sometimes I think for most organizations should be 25 kilograms, of which also that depends on the size of the load. Sometimes you may find a load is 25 kilograms, but it's a big box that you cannot carry alone. So sometimes you'll have to request for support. So lifting more than twice per minute, so that's the frequency. So you're bending and rising, bending, rising. So what is affected can be your glutes, can be your thigh muscles, can be your vertebral column, even your biceps and triceps can be affected, even your fingers. So that's really wrong. So sometimes it's good to here now someone would apply a robot lifts and places on this and even pushing. So if you are an occupational health and safety professional, what would you do in this case? That maybe possibly these materials are used frequently, meaning you'll be ferrying them the entire day. So what do you do? Sometimes you have to move the store closer to where the material is required. So sometimes you change the design, like we can't have the store the other side, or you can just decide to have nowadays they are what you call robots. So these ones are automated. So one will load, another will move. So they are really programmed, and they form part of the cyber physical systems. Most warehouses have adopted that and then conveyors, because as long as you reduce the frequency and the exposure, definitely going to also reduce the impact of the WMSDs. And then of course you see now the awkward lifting. See how the guy is bending. Okay, that it's not a device. So sometimes if he was to do that for the entire shift, sometimes you go 6 days a week, then you would develop low back pain immediately after some time. And also, it would always be feeling body pain when you go back home, and then you would feel a lot. Yeah, so it's not a good lifting posture. And then alternatives to lifting, what I was trying to say, use carts, hand trucks, hoists, conveyors, or other mechanical assistance. So this one, you need to brainstorm. A safety professional can not only develop the system, but also you need to be able to sit with engineers and see how to improve material handling, mostly because it's the one that causes a lot of injuries in the workplace. So that one, you look at it like that. Now, there is a store heavy items where you won't have to bend or reach to lift them. You see, all these ones you need to be able to assess. So that's why job hazard analysis is very important. You assess before you develop any occupational health and safety management plan. You really need to perform your work, and it's better you get a team so that you sit down, map out what you're going to do, understand how each activity is conducted, the process involved, and then study how people actually do that work. Sometimes you do observation, sometimes you interview these people and they will tell you how they've been doing, and then you start studying. Sometimes you look at the clinical records. You find people are frequently going to complain, maybe they have low back pain and so on. So you also analyze the records from the clinic and understand what is happening to your workers, so that you can develop a proper plan to manage this impact of WMSDs. So ergonomics at work, risk of injury, heavy lifting, and then you see he's carrying it manually, and this is what happens in every almost. There's guys who feel like they are strong enough, so that's not a device. So provide them with the material handling equipment. For example, now you see there's a cart, so he's not exerting a lot of force. Yes. So it may minimize, but also there's a little bit of manual handling still. So meaning if you can fully automate the system, then you find that the risk to injury has been eliminated. You see, even in this photo, the same thing. You see, here he's going to lift it alone. On the left, it's not recommended because the worker is lifting the large load on his own. But here, the worker is supported with material handling equipment, a trolley. So his work only is to push or slide the load to the trolley, and now uses it to transport it, which is recommended. So all these recommendations can be derived by proper assessment of the tasks. See, all this, you can look at that. Mechanical assistance is important. And then awkward lifting, you see, even the arrangement of the load itself. If that load fell on your leg and you're not putting on safety shoes, or even if you're putting on safety shoes and it hits your leg instead, because the impact is really high, so it will exert pain on you. Awkward postures, extended reaching. You find someone who is short is trying to stretch their hands to reach a load. Sometimes you may reach. Now when you're pulling, it falls on you. So how do you support this person? Maybe try to, or as long as these products are required always, so try to store them in shelves that cannot easily be reached by this employee, or provide them with ladders or platforms where they can stand and pick these very stable platforms. Bending or twisting of the trunk, and then working with arms away from the body, kneeling or squatting. So all this can actually be assessed during a job hazard analysis. And then the neutral posture, standing neutral posture, you can see it there. And then when you're seated, now I'd talked of the contact stress when you're seated on your seat and your wrists actually are resting on on the table. So you realize this person will not be affected by that because the seat has been properly adjusted, and actually even the design. If you look at low back, is supported, the shoulders are supported, you know, the legs. Sometimes for people who are short, you can get the leg rest, where you can put under the seat and someone can step on them if they can. If we adjust the seat and you can your legs cannot reach the ground, then you have to provide that to make sure that everyone is comfortable. So this is part of office ergonomics. And then awkward posture. This, you see the mechanics there. You see someone who I would say that's a nurse, or someone working in a hotel, dressing the beds and so on. So you're overstretching, and then, you know, all these things affect employees. So everyone is affected. That's why safety can only not be in manufacturing or construction industries only. No, it has to cover all sectors. You see, and then overreaching. You see how the person there is trying to reach, is harvesting flowers. Now you see this person after work, they are going to feel body pain and more fatigued, more lazy. So they will not feel like even waking up the next day to go and work. So if ergonomics is not taken seriously, they are going to be high many sick leaves, because, you know, people cannot sustain working for a long time in such conditions. Awkward postures, bending, kneeling, and then squatting. All this we see people. So once a job hazard analysis is done properly, you are going to identify all this, and then you now start designing training that is directly to a specific area and then the specific tasks, so such that these people know how they will be impacted. And also, when it comes to other mitigation measures, you want to come up with machines to support the work. Then definitely, because you did a proper job hazard analysis, you're going to give proper recommendations. So reducing low work, raise and or tilt the work for better access. Use a stool for ground level work, you understand, and then use tools with longer handles. Alternate between bending, kneeling, sitting, and squatting. You see, sometimes administrative measures can be put in place. You can either say this person cannot work here, maybe for the entire shift. So you can as a professional, you're going to say, okay, if you to work here for the entire day, you're definitely going to have a higher impact than someone who works like for 2 hours. So you have to train now your employees to be able to work in all steps in that process, such that you can rotate them to ensure that no one is exposed to certain risks for a long time. So you're giving them a break, meaning you'll be, so administrative measures are important. See that kind of bending. Now you've provided a workstation, you know, that makes work. So someone who's coming to pick a tool from that, if you look at on your right, that image, they don't have to bend because you've provided them the right platform. You see, so on the left, he's bending to pick. On the right, he's actually comfortable because he doesn't have to bend to pick something. So you've solved the problem by designing. So is health and safety professional is the one who gives this recommendation, because you'd have taken time to study. So it's not all about risk assessment, but it's about how you support the employer or your company to resolve the issues, make them understand why it's necessary. You see, this one is overreaching, you know. Maybe you provide a stool or a ladder so that they're able to work properly. So reducing high work, use an elevated work platform or rolling stairs. Use tools with longer handles. Limit overhead storage to infrequently used items. Bring the work down and tilt for easier access. Now you see. Here, the person was provided with a shorter tool. Here they have a proper tool that can reach there, so they don't need to really stretch themselves. Here person is trying to use a ladder, a wrong tool, here they have provided them with a platform that helps them lift that up. So what you do as a health and safety professional is just to ensure that as long as you've conducted, I repeat, a job hazard analysis properly, you're going to understand the specific tasks and how they are performed, and then which tools these employees would need to support them to perform their tasks safely. So it's proper. You see, this is also not accepted. The person is overstretching to pick that. So what is supposed to be done? Keep items within close reach so that you don't have to really overstretch. And then remove obstacles. Use gravity feed racks. You see, all this. It's just about improving the design and everything. And you make someone's life easy. There is a hand-intensive work. Risk factors for MSD, of course. Hand-intensive work. What does this entail? You see, sometimes you find sorting. You're in a processing plant, so you have to remove bad fruits, bad apples. So, and then you find you're working in a conveyor. That's actually moving faster because, in most companies, they set hourly production targets. Can even be in any processing plant. Water. So sometimes you act as the CCP, that's a critical control point, where no defective product has to pass. So you have to use your eyes, so meaning you'll be moving very fast and so on. So making the same motion repeatedly can cause a lot of wear and tear on the joints being used, and if you don't rest to allow time for them to heal, the damage can just keep building up. So remember that. So reduction or repetition, arrange work to avoid unnecessary motions, let power tools and machinery do the work. So most of these processes, you don't make your act as a CCPs, critical control points. You have to set, that process has to be automated, such that automatically any defective product detected can be picked up at the CCP. Spread repetitive work out during the day, meaning, like I said, this is an administrative task. So you have to rotate workers. Take stretch pauses. Allow breaks. And also training to make you understand what you're supposed to do. Rotate tasks with co-workers if possible. Already change hands or motions frequently. See. So you use power tools. Don't struggle here. On the left is using a fixed spanner, which really affects the employee after some time. So you need to automate or semi-automate systems. Now the grip. See, a power grip is 5 times stronger than a pinch grip. See, that one I can really admit is true, because if you look at the 2 pounds grip, an example is when if you're doing some work and then you doze off and then you realize your pen falls off before even you realize, so it loosens. So much of it is linked to our situation awareness. So if you are dozing and so on, you fail. So if you look at all this gripping and so on, those ones who make cakes and so on, you see the work they do. It's not easy. So that's why the cakes are expensive. A lot of human factors is there. If you look at now this. Okay. So your grip strength decreases when you bend your wrists, pick up slippery items, wear poorly fitting gloves, have cold hands. Please assess every job properly. Understand how the job is performed. Look at every step from the starting point to the end point, and ensure that you assess all the risks. Pick them out and put mitigation measures. Understand from the worker how they feel when they are performing each task. pick out which tasks that literally affect. That's why a health and safety management system is not about writing procedures. Most people go into let's write procedures. But a health and safety professional is supposed to assess all. It even takes a year. Sometimes that's why you find organizations that have well-established systems. It didn't start from procedures just alone. It started from understanding the activities and learning how work is done and how these activities affect the health and safety of the workers. And you try to work out ways of minimizing this negative impact so that the workers start enjoying doing their work, and the company also reduces costs of treatments, those lost man hours, see, the sick leaves and everything. See, all this. So here someone is trying to do the work while using his arm as a clamp. Here, provide them with a clamp such that they know they do the work properly. So these are things that it looks a little bit like a normal thing to do. No, it's not. After some time, this person on the left is going to feel really pain after work, fatigued, while this one on the right can feel relieved, knows that their health and safety specialist cares about them. See this. If you see the bent wrist, if it takes 1 hour, it's gonna really have pain. So it's going to, have to massage and stretch. So that has to be looked into. You see. So now provide them with the tools, proper tools to use. You see. So risk of injuries goes up as you combine factors. Always remember. So if you combine repetition, awkward posture, and then prolonged exposure, you're gonna have serious injury. So intensive keying. So this is if you look at the keyboard, nowadays they have designed those ones that are little. When the computers were just introduced, the buttons were really hard. So after some time, see, people would feel really fatigued and feeling numbness on their fingers. So spread keyboard work throughout the day. Take stretch pauses, improve your posture, and move around as much as possible. So this one, in most cases, you need to be trained on this. But I realize if you look at Microsoft Office, they have a tool now that supports dictation. So instead of typing, you can actually dictate. You understand? When you dictate, the computer automatically converts that to word, then you edit later. So all these improvements can be made. And then vibrations. This is one of the WMSDs. So now look at this. The tools, moderate vibrations, and then high vibrations. But all these vibrations are because of the tools that the employees use. Job hazard analysis, I still repeat, you will pick up all this. And then use vibration tools if available. Use low vibration tools if available. Maintain tools. Use anti-vibration gloves or tool wraps. Keep hands warm. So in most cases, if you see, if the tools are not lubricated, so that's why they say maintain tools. Well-maintained tools don't cause a lot of vibrations. And then also the gloves provide PPE that absorb vibrations so that they don't affect the employees. So I would go into, depends on which country, but I would go into OSHA guidelines for ergonomics. However, this should really depend on each country. If the country has better guidelines, at least you follow them. So those are the OSHA guidelines for ergonomics. I wouldn't want to really get into that because every country has its own guidelines. So remember, OSHA does not have regulations to address ergonomics, only recommendations and guidelines for those in the US. But in other countries, possibly now, most countries have guidelines. But of course, as a health and safety professional, you need to base on the relevant health and safety legislation in your country to help consider human factors as one of the risks in the workplace, and then look at it in overall. So when you're doing a risk assessment, you look at all this, and then what you can do: recognize and report signs and symptoms early. Get involved in ergonomics. Always don't focus on managing systems alone. Get your hands dirty. Go study the work and make recommendations. Develop ergonomics management plans for every, if it's a department, go for every department. If just make sure that if you go to office, look at your office ergonomics. You go to warehouses, there's warehouse ergonomics, everything, manual handling or material handling, all this. So you develop plans to manage all these ergonomic risks. Then those plans feed into the health and safety management system. Recognition and reporting signs and symptoms. Of course, these ones, most companies have clinics. So whenever workers go there, they report the signs. And that's why you should always refer to the clinic records also when you are doing the assessments and reviewing the effectiveness of the mitigation measures. Why is it important to report signs and all symptoms early? Acute injuries can easily become chronic injuries and can sometimes lead to disability, even surgery. So this one has to be taken seriously. Early treatment save time and money, which is true. Because if you delay and becomes chronic, then someone can even take a year. Depending on which country, you may find you have to pay this worker for 1 year and compensate them even if they are not working, because they fell sick because of the work you did. So sometimes they call it negligence. You knew that there was a problem with the task. You employed a health and safety professional to do this, and why didn't you implement mitigation measures? Most of these incidents cause a lot of legal issues, and that's why in the introduction to occupational health and safety, I looked at why do organizations implement safety management systems? Because of this. Getting involved, look at jobs. I repeat, I don't know, I know I've mentioned job hazard analysis for a long time. Look at the jobs. What do they mean by looking at the jobs? Study each job, the process of executing its job, not the process down every step. Analyze, look at what is used, the material, equipment, blah blah, all those aspects that are used to perform that task, and how do those materials interact with the people performing the tasks. Then you'll get to come up with solutions, work with solutions, take part in training. This one I mentioned it when I was explaining. Take responsibility for changing the way you do your job. Exactly. Help to make sure efforts are successful. So 5 key points to remember. Ergonomics can help you on your job. You'll know how to do your job safely. Work musculoskeletal disorders can happen in jobs with risk factors. Risk factors can be reduced and WMSDs prevented, which is true. That's what we've been explaining. Reporting signs and symptoms early is important. That clinic or that infirmary that you have can support, analyze, you have to really analyze all the data you have. Reporting signs and symptoms early is important. You can help your company put ergonomic changes in place because you've done the assessment. You've come up with maybe the clinic records are supporting, what you've discovered. Also the interviews with the employees. So now the mitigation measures, and then the HR records for sick leave and so on. It's all is tagged into ergonomics. Then you're going to use that to help the organization implement ergonomics management plan to help reduce this risk of injury. So, body mapping exercise, possibly take your time. All profit, answer questions 1 for using your own personal experience, and then once all groups are done, then answer question 5. So I wouldn't want really hear you just for you to look at this, but would have set the questions, but since this is an online class, is not a formal training, don't pay attention to the questions, just focus on understanding. Otherwise, thanks for attending, and I hope to meet you again next week.